Hello, sophomores. These are your video instructions for the things that carried narrative prompt. I'm going to go over these with you. Remember, if you, at any point this week when you're working on this, if you want to have a video chat with me or email me, feel free to do so. So here's what you're going to be doing. In no more than 2 pages, you might be thinking, yay, 2 pages, but I think you'll find that this is actually, it'll be kind of challenging to keep it down to 2 pages. You're going to showcase your writing skills while incorporating ideas and modeling stylistic elements of diction and syntax used in Tim O'Brien's The Things That Carried. I want to say before I get into the instructions, this is a personal narrative, so you're not going to be writing about the book. You're not going to be writing about Vietnam. It's not literary analysis. It's not rhetorical analysis. It is a personal narrative and creative writing. But what you're doing is you're writing in a creative style, and you're taking some ideas from Tim O'Brien. So here are your requirements. The first is to identify your group and explain or define it if necessary toward the beginning of your essay. I will explain what I mean by your group in a moment. You need to devote 1 paragraph or the equivalent of it, meaning, if you have like 5 sentences interspersed throughout your paper, that's okay, to the setting of your group, including the group's actions and or purpose. So to take an example from The Things They Carried, there's this quote from the novel: "They carried the land itself, Vietnam, the place, the soil, powdery orange-red dust." The group here is, of course, O'Brien's platoon, and their setting is Vietnam. Their purpose is to carry these things over the land as they march from place to place. Again, more instructions on your group to come. You should have an obvious theme or purpose in your writing. If you choose one of the prompts, the theme or the purpose should come out. You need to use, identify in bold, and label in parentheses 4 different examples of diction or syntax from our class list. We've been making that class list all year. It is on Classroom still. You'll have to scroll down a bit, but it's posted there if you need it. So I'm talking about things like repetition, juxtaposition, personification, metaphor, imagery, alliteration, anaphora. And so what you see here is how it's going to look in your paper. Oops. So an example: lonely and despondent, the paper wailed in desperation until the student looked at her pen and began to write a page, and then instantaneously the paper was happy once again. That is personification. Notice how the sentence is bolded. This shouldn't be highlighted, so I'm not going to highlight it. But this is how it will look in your paper. The sentence that is using the element of diction or syntax will be bold, and then the name of the device will be in parentheses at the end. And that's 4 times you're going to do that. Now, you're not limited to the 4, and nor really should you be. This is creative writing. You should really be considering your word choice carefully and having fun with it. So it's not like, I think you should only use 4 elements of diction or syntax. But you don't have to label beyond 4. Just label the 4 that you think are particularly good, and that's what I'll be looking for. As far as formatting, include a heading with name, date, and class period, and that order is fine, and then Times New Roman 12 double-spaced. And finally, create an effective title. I would like a title for this one, and it should be creative and effective. Alright, so these are your prompts. So your first prompt is to choose one group you belong to or are a member of, whether that's a team, club, organization, friend, or family group, etc. I've had students write about band. I know a lot of you are in band. I've had students write about being in the musical. I've had students write about a sports team, dance team, cheerleading, But I also had students write about like their really close group of friends or a club they're in. I've had students write about their families. There's a lot that you can do with this group. I mean, it could even be like an online group, people you play video games with. I think I had someone write about that last year. So once you've decided on your group, think about the things people in that group carry. So your things can include the following, mimicking O'Brien's ideas. So tangible things you can touch. The things they carried were determined by necessity, O'Brien says, and he lists all the things soldiers had carried. Things that are determined based on rank, position, or specialty. The different roles people have in your group. They might be carrying different things, for example. Things that vary by mission. I was in marching band, so if I were writing this, I'd probably write about band. So like I look at the vary by mission, and I think about what we would wear in the summer versus the fall, versus the end of the season. Things that are determined to some extent by superstition. To go back to band again, I played clarinet, and the clarinet section, we had this jewelry box, and there was a 4-leaf clover in it, and that was something that we took turns carrying in our uniform pocket during performances for good luck. Things that specifically pertain to your group or activity. Marching band, instruments, reeds, sheet music, etc. And then, of course, talk about things that are intangible, such as emotional baggage, things that can't be touched or felt. And you're not limited to those, so other ideas. So notice underneath it says, choose as many of the above categories as you see fit, but at least 2. So I would like to see at least 2 of these touched upon in your writing. Now, here's some other ideas to consider in your writing. If you can't quite get 2 pages from that, although I think you pretty easily could, but you could also tell me what your group dreams of or hopes for, how they dress, vocabulary specific to your group. So, obviously stay school appropriate. I don't want to hear anything inappropriate, but, if you're talking about a friend group and you don't mind sharing, things that you guys just say to each other, just like the soldiers in the novel had their own language for things. Why your group does what it does, what its purpose is, how your group carries themselves, how the group feels about itself. So that is prompt 1. Here's prompt 2. So according to IGI Global, happening truth is an objective, factual account of events which occurred. Story truth, sometimes referred to as emotional truth, is a subjective reflection of a person's thoughts and feelings about the same event when telling that story. Now, of course, as you know, the crux of the novel is this difference between happening and story truth. So Tim O'Brien uses a writing style that allows him to switch back and forth from objective observations to subjective emotions when sharing a story. All right, so here's your prompt here for prompt 2. You're still choosing a group you belong to or are a member of, whether that's a team, club, organization, friend, family group, etc. Same kinds of groups can work here. But you're going to write a narrative for this one about a challenging time for the group. Maybe a time when the group or members in it was at war, for example. Notice wars, I don't mean that in the literal sense, but it's in quotation marks. As you tell your story, try to switch back and forth from objective observation to subjective emotions. Try to switch between the happening and story truth, and in doing so, bring the story to the present for me, your reader. Keep in mind O'Brien's advice. In any war story, but especially a true one, it's difficult to separate what happened from what seemed to happen. What seems to happen becomes its own happening and has to be told that way. So tell the story as it is happening, or as it happened. Include yourself. I haven't said this yet, but obviously, the first and second person can and should be used in this writing, right? Also, throughout your essay or towards conclusion, include commentary about how the experiences and emotions from the short story truth shaped your perception of the event. or challenge. I think prompt 2 is a little more challenging, but I got some really, really great essays that did prompt 2 last year. It stretched students quite a bit to write in this style. Now here's a little note here. I think this works really well for prompt 2. It's very timely. You could apply our current situation to this prompt, and in this case, your group could be your family, for example. How is this experience challenging your family group? You can tell me about your impressions of living a normal life during this, and how it feels versus how, what's literally happening. So you can certainly talk about current events, but you don't have to. You could talk about something that, already happened to you, happened in the past. Some students that did this prompt last year talked about something that had happened when they were children, young children. That's fine. Some students wrote about something that happened a couple months ago. So it's really up to you as to what you want to do if you pick prompt 2. As far as points, this will be 20 points in the essay category, and it's going to be due Thursday by midnight with the full week to work on it. Just make sure, whatever prompt you pick, that you go back to these requirements and make sure that you meet them. All right. If you have any questions for me, feel free to ask. Again, I'll be available during my office hours for video chats, emails. If you want me to, if you want to write a couple paragraphs, want me to look at it, give feedback, I'd be happy to do that. I'll make sure that I'm available. But I hope you guys enjoy writing this, and I'm really looking forward to reading what you come up with.